This is David Goldman, Asia Times Deputy Editor, speaking to you from New York City, the evening of June 1st. Stocks lost some modest gains this afternoon after the Institute for Supply Management reported more data about, you guessed it, inflation. This is not a news story. It's a question of second verse, same as the first, but worse. If you look at the chart of the day, we see that by a couple of key measures, the U.S. economy has the worst inflation pressure since 1979, the eve of a very deep post-war recession brought on by uncontrollable inflation. The Supply Management Institute shows that prices paid by industrial firms are at the highest level since 1979. That is, the largest number of their members report higher prices, and also the largest number of members report delays coming from suppliers. That means there are bottlenecks all across the system. It's not just that home builders can't buy lumber and machine shops can't buy screws. That's right. We have a systemic failure of American supply chains in the face of a tidal wave of demand handed to the American population by the federal government. The sclerotic supply chains of the United States simply cannot process $5 trillion of additional demand. So if this is like 1979, what's going to happen? Well, all the symptoms are there. We've got more than 13% annualized increases in housing prices. We've got a 30% increase in used car prices during the year to date, and a 50% year-on-year increase because auto production can't keep up with the demand, partly due to the semiconductor shortage. We were supposed to get a bit of relief from commodity prices, but the broad commodity index today reached a new post-COVID record because oil reached a new post-COVID record. So everything really is going wrong at once. Back in 1979, Paul Volcker administered the equivalent of chemotherapy to the U.S. economy. He pushed the federal funds rate, the Fed's overnight rate, up from about 8% in 1979 to a peak of 20% in 1980. Now, the U.S. economy could sustain chemotherapy back then because federal debt was only about 30% of GDP. Now it's 130% of GDP. And if the Federal Reserve increases interest rates to crush inflation, they will also drastically increase the cost of servicing America's enormous debt. That leaves the Fed painted into a corner with not much choice except to pray for disinflation and tell the world it's all going to be transitory, it's all going to be all right. Exactly how long it will take the market to figure out that the Fed is talking up its sleeve is not clear, but when that happens, we'll have a very nasty shakeout. Ray Dalio, the legendary hedge fund manager, said he'd rather own Bitcoin than bonds. I'm not a fan of Bitcoin, but I am a great skeptic about bonds right now. So I continue to recommend buying hedges that do well when bond prices fall. For example, inverse ETFs that trade inversely to bond prices. Stay afraid and be very afraid. This is David Goldman speaking to you from New York City.